here's the idea of incremental risk charge, the large summary. This charge was built to block that regulatory arbitrage. We know that what banks were doing is, they knew that they had benefit of keeping their assets in the trading book as against banking book because capital charges were lower. So maybe if there is a new credit asset, some sort of a bond, then banks would be more inclined to keep it in the trading book because capital charge would be lower. So this was some sort of a solution to block it. Here is a summary. 2005, the committee realized that capital requirement for trading book is lower than the banking book. So banking book we use 1 year, 99% VAR, whereas trading book we were using 10-day, 99% VAR. So what banks tended to hold credit-dependent instruments in the trading book. Correct? This is what we call as the regulatory arbitrage. If I'm buying a bond, even though my intention is to trade, I would somehow try to put that in the... No, even if my intention is to hold to maturity, I will somehow still keep it in the trading book, so my capital charge is lower. So here is what these guys did. In 2005, they proposed IDRC, which was called incremental default risk charge. Now, after reading this so closely, consecutively, one of the things that I'm reaching to conclusion is that Basel committee themselves are not really sure about what they want to do. No, it's a game of hit and miss for everyone. Like, regulators come up with something, banks figure out a way to cheat on the system, and then regulators come up with new rules. So originally they came up with incremental default risk charge. Okay, they said there should be additional capital for credit-dependent instruments in the trading book. In simple language, if I have a bond in my trading book, does it have credit risk? Yes. Can it default? Yes. So then there should be additional capital provided for the credit risk on top of the stressed VAR. Are you following the difference? But then later on they thought, especially observing 2008, that when you buy bonds, you will have losses if there's a default. But most of the time, default doesn't happen, the credit rating reduces. Correct? So if you create capital only for default risk, then you're not capturing the risk that bond price will fall because of changes in credit rating. So in 2008, they revised it to IRC, which is incremental risk charge. So they realized that most of the losses were coming from delta credit ratings. Is it okay? Now later on we would learn that in FRTB, that they somehow thought, okay, we should bring that default risk component back. So they brought in IDRC back, but they said, if I name it as IDRC, it would be too confusing. So they call it IDR charge. IDRC is incremental default risk charge. In FRTB, they call it as incremental default risk, IDR charge. So not IDRC, IDR charge, but same concept. But right now we are on 2.5, so let's focus here. 2005, they come up with IDRC. Later on, realize that default doesn't happen, credit rating changes more frequently, so they come up with IRC. How is IRC calculated? So kind of a similar process. We use 1 year, 99% VAR, which means it is similar to how VAR would have been charged in the banking book. Is that making sense to you? But this is for losses from credit-sensitive products in the trading book. It's not for everything. This considers both default risk as well as delta credit rating. So with this risk, we try to capture that component. And because IRC is charged on the trading book, it would be wrong to assume that my liquidity horizon is same as my maturity. What does it mean? Imagine it's a banking book. I have given a 5-year loan. What is the maturity of this asset? 5 years. And what is my liquidity horizon? 5 years, because I would expect I would not get money before the loan matures. But if it is my trading book, so in trading book, I have a 5-year bond. What is the maturity? 5 years. But what is the liquidity horizon? It could be anything, but definitely not 5 years, because if my intention was to hold to maturity, it would have gone into banking book. Make sense to you? So maybe my liquidity horizon could be as low as 3 months or 6 months, that I'm buying a 5-year bond, but my intention is to sell it for 3 months. And this needs to be taken into account, especially at the time of VAR calculation. Because if I'm going to sell it in 3 months, probably, there is a less probability of default within the 3 months window period. Yes or no? So here is what those guys did. They came up with something really fancy and very logical, a concept of constant level of risk assumption. It's a little technical, so we have to be careful here. I'm going step by step. Because IRC is charged on trading book, liquidity horizon is not same as maturity. Banks are required to estimate for each instrument what my liquidity horizon. So which means if I have, let's say, 500 different bonds in my portfolio, for each of the bond, bank is required to provide what is going to be the liquidity horizon. How will they determine that? How will a bank determine liquidity horizon? Based on their intention to sell. So if they feel that I want to sell this bond in 3 months, 3 months. I want to sell it in 1 year, 1 year. Make sense to you? But condition here was that whatever bank assumed, it cannot be less than 3 months. At minimum, 3 months. Now here is a problem. I have to calculate a 1 year 99% VAR. But I'm going to sell the bond in 3 months' time. How do I calculate 1 year VAR? Are you following what I'm trying to say? So then they came up with a brilliant idea. They call this as constant level of risk assumption. What does it mean? Maybe let me draw it for you here. It's got a little blurred. It works this way. This is 0. This is 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. Let us say I purchase a AA rated bond at time 0. I specify my liquidity horizon to be 3 months. I want to simulate what is going to be my losses in different simulation environments so that I can calculate that 1 year 99% VAR. What I would simulate is, first I will simulate that when I reach 3 months, the credit rating has dropped. So credit rating has dropped and my AA rated bond has become A rated bond. My liquidity horizon is only 3 months. So what will I do now? I will sell this. But if I sell this, then what happens? I get cash. I want to reinvest that cash, so I will buy a new bond. Which bond? Same as the original AA rated bond. This is called as the constant level of risk assumption. So I sell the one where rating has dropped, I buy a new one. Then the same story gets repeated here. Then the same story gets repeated here. Then the same story gets repeated here. Now what happens because of this? Because of this, I'm technically selling, let's assume my bonds, the moment credit rating falls. And because of that, the probability that there would be a default in my bond portfolio reduces substantially. Is that making sense to you? Because credit rating नीचे गया, अपने bond बेच दिया. The moment credit rating fell, you sold the bond. And because of that, the 1 year 99% VAR under this provision came down to be substantially lower. Are you following this? Because they made assumption of constant level of risk. And again, in FRTB, we will learn that they thought it was a stupid idea way back in 2008. So under FRTB, they abolished this concept of constant level of risk. But right now, you need to know it, that what constant level of risk means. So bank will Let's see if we can read this part. Bank will replace bonds 4 times with same credit rating. So if the liquidity horizon is 3 months, every third month they will sell the bond and then they will buy a new one. Now what is the impact of this? It is less likely, okay, I should have written less here, that there will be default. Instead, small losses are realized due to rating downgrades, which is called as a rebalancing. Every quarter you're rebalancing, every quarter you would book some small losses, and this had effect of reducing 1 year 99% VAR. Are we okay? This is the provision under IRC. Again, when we learn this one at a time, it's easier. The challenge is going to be memorizing all of this at the end of the course, because there are too many small pieces to remember. Good, ask me questions now. Have you, okay, you finish your question first. Have you seen that credit rating transaction matrices? So we would make use of them. And we would make use only in the loss tail. In case of this, it would be right or left tail, whatever tail. So it's not that every simulated value is going to be a change of credit rating, but it's an assumption of constant risk rebalancing. If rating doesn't change, I remain there. But if rating changes, I sell that, I buy a new one. So when I want to simulate those environment for whatever number of years, what I do is, if I want to create one simulation is made of 4 quarters. Within 4 quarters, I will have 4 simulations. So 1 year is actually made of 4 separate simulations. What happens at quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. That's one path, then second path, then third path, then fourth path. Then you create simulated paths. And then you figure out what is my 99.9% bar out of your probability distribution, the value that you have generated. And then this is for one bond. And this you do for all the trading positions in the credit sensitive positions in your portfolio. Now, I did not find any discussion in Basel 2.5 on credit risk for equity securities. But what happens is, when credit rating falls, even equity securities fall in price significantly. So in FRTB, they also incorporated equity security under the charge that we are going to see now. Does that make sense? Simulating. No, we are not actually selling. See, this is all hypothetical. What risk management team does and what the actual traders are doing there is different. This is post-mortem. Correct? We're just sitting and we're making simulations about what might happen. Now, how are you making simulations? Either you use historical data, so historical simulation. You use Monte Carlo data, it becomes Monte Carlo simulation. So simulation might be anyone, but how values are being simulated is, for 1 year you're generating those paths and then you're calculating your losses. Why is it not considered as a credit VAR? This is a credit VAR under the market risk. See, in credit VAR, anyways, we were capturing the default risk. But in credit VAR, a 5-year bond, we don't sell in 5 years. We don't sell in 3 months. How it is different than the banking book is, here you have a credit instrument, but maturity and liquidity horizon do not match. So this was a solution proposed to that problem. Is it okay? Right. Yes.